Welcome back to Project Freelance. How's it going, guys? I'm back with another guest. This is Maulik Parekh from the Philippines. Well, he's by way of India, in the Philippines right now. And he was a CEO of a company called Inspiro, and he is a hobby wildlife photographer, videographer, and he actually just came out with a book all about the future of the workplace. It's called Futureproof, Your Career and Company. You can check that book out. I'll put a link down in the description. So today we're not only talking to a photographer, we're talking to an author, we're talking to an ex-CEO of a company, we're talking to a keynote speaker. This guy has done a lot over his career, and I'm really excited to dig into his past, how he built his career, and what his book is all about. The future of the digital world and digital gig economy, and the future of artificial intelligence and how it's taking over the workplace, and how companies can integrate AI into their workplace and still keep actual human beings on their force. So before we get into this episode, just a few housekeeping things. First of all, thank you for listening to Project Freelance. If you're a new listener, please hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to get notified every single week when we have new episodes come out. If you've been listening for a couple episodes now, you kind of get the gist of the show, you like the show, do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback on Apple Podcasts. If you have an iPhone, you have an iCloud account, which means you can get onto Apple Podcasts because it's free. It's like included in your iPhone iCloud plan thing. So yeah, if you could do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback on the show on Apple Podcasts, just scroll down to the bottom of the Project Freelance podcast and you'll see an area with ratings and feedback. And if you do fill that out and submit that, I will actually send you a signed photo print of Let's Do Wildlife this week. I'll talk more about it at the end of this episode, but if you guys want a signed photo print from me of a photo that I've taken, definitely leave a rating and feedback, and then send a screenshot of it to me at Project Freelance on Instagram, and I'll get that right out to you. The next thing I want to let you know about is that I have a photography book out. It's called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. You see, when I'm not freelancing, I actually explore abandoned places. And if you want to check out a copy of my book, if you want to pick one up and support my art, head to notracers.com, or you can go to my website, justtheletterk.com/shop. You can pick up a book, a hat, a backpack, a duffel bag. I've got all kinds of cool stuff up there that you should go check out. That's also my website for my creative work. If you guys want to see my videography, my photography, any of that cool stuff, go to justtheletterk.com. And lastly, this podcast has a partner, and that partner is Liquid Death Mountain Water. If you've never heard of it, don't worry. I've got an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So if you would like 10% off of Liquid Death Mountain Water, hit the link in the description or go to liquiddeath.com and use code JustTheLetterK after you pick up a case of water and a set of koozies. Then you can get that 10% discount. Code JustTheLetterK. All right, without further ado, this is my guest, Maulik Parekh. Please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience. And welcome to the show.
Hi, this is Maulik Parekh. I am currently based in the Philippines. Excited to talk about freelancing with you, mainly because I just finished publishing a book that talked about how freelancing or the gig economy is becoming such an important trend that has a potential to completely disrupt the way we do our work. And it has massive implications for employees as well as employers. So very excited to be part of this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. I think what you have to say and the things you write about are going to help a lot of people, not only that are hearing this podcast, that pick up a copy of, your books. So how did you get into the space to, first of all, like start writing? It's a huge task to take on, being an author. So what got you into this space that you're in and the interest enough to have a passion to write about it?
Well, until March of 2020, I was CEO of one of the largest BPO companies here in the Philippines. And in my last 3 years as a CEO, I started noticing a few trends that were impacting my business in particular. And I noticed that my colleagues and my peers in the industry were experiencing the same. And I realized that I needed to do some more research, and I wanted to write a book about it. But as long as you have a full-time job, it's very hard to take time off and start writing a book. So luckily, when I left my stint as the CEO, my goal last year was to actually travel around the world with my camera and take pictures and videos and share it with friends and family. But that didn't happen because of the pandemic. So I thought the best use of time when I'm stuck at home is to really go through my bucket list and check off one thing that I really wanted to do for a long time, and that was to write a book. So within 6 months, literally from March to October, I sat down and I researched and completed writing a 200 and some 50-page book. This is not something that I do professionally. It's something that I really wanted to do, but it has struck a chord with people like you who are full-time freelancers or people who are running organizations, and they are realizing that they are having a difficulty now attracting and retaining talent because they are no longer just competing with other employers in the neighborhood, but they're also competing with people's innate desire to be the masters of their destiny and start their freelancing business. So how do you create an environment in a company where you give them a little bit of a freedom, you give them a culture of entrepreneurship, and try to retain them?
Wow. That's absolutely amazing, and as like myself, I wrote a photography book. When I'm not freelancing, I explore abandoned places. So I wrote like a whole book and had photos in it. And so I know that, it's a task to create something like this, but the fact that you did this and that you're doing it to, help guide others, I think is very special. So as a freelancer myself, like, I want to extend a thank you to you for putting your thoughts down on paper and for sharing them with the world. I think that it's very special to write, especially like if you're not a professional writer, I think it takes a lot more heart to put into a book when you're doing it out of a passion. So thank you for creating that. And if people want to pick up a copy of that book, can you just tell them the name and where they can get it?
Yeah, the name of the book is Futureproof Your Career and Company, and it's available on Amazon. They can either Google the name Futureproof Your Career and Company or my name, Maulik Parekh, and they'll be able to get to it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, looking back, I cannot even believe that I took on that project and I was able to complete it within 6 months, because I think you almost have to be out of your mind to take on a project of writing a book. It takes such intensity, such discipline, and you have to be in that zone all the time in order to complete it. Because I have had friends who started writing a book and they say, well, I would write once a week or over the weekend, and it never gets done because unless you have that daily schedule to really commit to it and make it happen, at least in my case, that's what I needed to do. But to your point, reason I wanted to get on this podcast is because when I was doing research for the book, and I'm covering 3 different trends there, artificial intelligence, the digital natives, and the gig economy. And I thought the gig economy is an important trend, but not such a powerful trend in the beginning. But then as I researched more, I realized that among the 3, the gig economy, or the emergence of freelancing in the world, is probably the most powerful force, because it relates to our innate desire as a human being to crave freedom. And if we think about our lives, if you're a traditional employee working for a company, when do you have your freedom? On Friday, right? That's why we call it Thank God It's Friday, not Thank God It's Monday. And what freelancing does, it allows you to finally have freedom between Monday to Friday as well, where you decide who you work with, you decide how you work, when you work, and all the permutations that go with getting the job done. Now, obviously, it's not all positive. It's not all pink and rosy. Obviously, to your point earlier, it takes a lot of effort to build your business as a freelancer and continue to have that steady stream of income.
Absolutely. So for you, like with this project that you took on, how did you decide on those three pillars that you wanted to focus on: AI, digital natives, and gig economy? Like I know you did a lot of research, but what made you land on those three? Did you feel like they were like the most disruptive and the most important things for this day and age and for the future?
Yeah, because of my own personal experience. So when I was the CEO of this company, Inspiro, I started noticing that the artificial intelligence was slowly infiltrating our workplaces and our processes and our jobs. Things that people used to do just 3 years ago were being done now by artificial intelligence. It was so sneaky that we didn't even take a step back and say, oh my God, this is a force that we need to reckon. Otherwise, before we know it, by 2030, we may not have the jobs that we are providing to our employees. So that was one. Now, the second thing that I noticed was that there was a major transformation happening at the workplace, especially in our company, where almost 95% of the people that we hired in the last 3 years were digital natives, either Gen Zers or millennials. And I did some research and I realized that by 2030, 2/3 of the global workforce will be made up of digital natives. And so we have to stop looking at these Gen Zers as the hippies who love to put on their headphones and drink soy latte or eat avocado toast sandwich. We need to really start paying attention to them, because within 10 years they'll be sitting in positions of power and influence in the corporate world. So that was the second thing that I noticed. And then the third thing I realized here, especially in the Philippines, is that a lot more people were gravitating towards becoming the masters of their own destinies. And in the past, a lot of Filipinos would leave the country to go to countries like the US or Australia or countries in Europe to make a living and support their families back in the Philippines. But freelancing allows them to now stay in the country and make a good living and be competitive with their peers around the world. And so I thought that not only it allows you to be the masters of your own destiny, but it actually is such a powerful force in how it's changing the society and a nation like the Philippines in how people make a living without leaving their country behind and having to go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the United Arab Emirates, so I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a lot of Filipinos that come over there to work and, take care of their families back in the Philippines. And I think it's awesome that people are starting to realize that they can be, like you said, the masters of their own destiny. They can be the captain of their own ship. They can work for themselves and build a life for themselves, and financial independence and financial freedom, which I think is absolutely huge, especially as a freelancer. It's a lot of people struggle for a long time because they don't realize how long it takes to build their business. And when I was in film school studying for my bachelor's degree, I remember my dad asking one of my professors, like, how long is this going to take for my kid's career to like take off and for their business to be financially independent? You know what I mean? And they said, most businesses take like 5 to 7 years to really start to build that snowball and have that snowball effect where the gigs are just coming one after the other. So yeah. I think that it's very bold of people to jump into this space of freelancing, but I also want them to realize how difficult it can be at the beginning, especially when you are starting from zero. Like for myself, I was living overseas as a teenager and in college, and I moved to America, or back to America, I should say. and had to start from zero. I didn't know anybody when I moved to California, so I had to build a business off of nothing, literally. And so it takes a lot of heart and a lot of compassion to become a freelancer. So I admire anybody that steps into this space. So as far as the future of the workplace, do you think it's going to continue to go in that AI direction? And do you think that more like freelance type of creatives are going to be brought into these workplaces as like work from home type of people? Like, where do you see like the future of the workplace going and the future of work going?
No, that's a great question. And before I answer that, I do want to admire you as well for making that leap of faith and embracing the world of freelancing. You're absolutely right. It's not easy, but then nothing is easy, right?
True.
As long as you have a longer view of life, as long as you are not trying to make a big name for yourself just overnight, as long as you're willing to commit to something, then obviously things will happen. The other advantage that freelancing offers is that you are always going to select something that you are passionate about. In your case, for example, I mean, there is a reason I'm sure you chose to go to film school and you chose to create a career in creating films and being a photographer, or creating and sharing your creativity with others, because I'm sure among all the classes that you took when you were in school, you were gravitated towards that photography and videography and the creative realm, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
And once you select something that you like, then when you have to struggle a little bit, when you have to put in your years, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have to imagine you became an accountant, and yeah, you would have an amazing job, and your dad would be very happy that you have a really well-paying job and a steady job, and you don't have to worry about ever making your payments, etc.
Yeah.
But you would not be happy inside. And when you look back at your life, you'll be like, oh my God, I mean, this is a wasted life. I had an opportunity to make something out of my passion and I didn't do it, right? So I think people have to kind of take a step back and also think about life in a longer term view and decide when they are 70, 80 years old, when they look back, what kind of regrets they're going to have, and how do they avoid having those regrets starting now, not looking back.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's such a valid point, and we hear a lot of times about, people that are, on their way out, on their way to the next life, or the next whatever you believe in that's after this life, that they regret not following their dreams and following their passions. And I want to encourage people that listen to this show and people that I meet to chase their dreams, because you have, only this short limited time on this planet, and you don't want to regret things. You want to live life to the fullest, if you will. So I think it's super important to chase your dreams and follow your passions. And, personally, like for anybody listening to this, like I had support at the beginning, but I also had like the questions of like, are you going to get a real job? Like, when is this going to pay off, kind of thing. But, I decided to kind of buck the system and follow my dreams no matter what. And it's paying off now, and so I'm super, super happy with what I do. And I just want people to know that. So my next question for you is, the journey, like we talked about, it can be difficult. How can companies ensure their employees that they'll enjoy the expedition, like that they'll enjoy the journey?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and something that I talk often during my keynote speeches is how do you create a culture where employees are given that opportunity to come and share their views and manifest them, right? So one way to do that is actually creating a culture of entrepreneurship. So the only way you can actually compete with people's innate desire to be the masters of their own destiny is if you give them a framework, if you create a culture where people can come with their ideas, and if those ideas are really good, they are able to manifest them. But if you have a culture where basically anytime somebody comes up with a new idea, the only thing they hear back is that, oh well, we tried it and it didn't work out, or that doesn't work here, or we would never try that again, right? As long as companies can create a culture where employees feel like they have the freedom to come up with new ideas and potentially manifest them. That's very important. Second thing, employees want to be heard. They don't want to be a number.
Yeah.
If they feel that every day when they go to work, they are essentially a number, and what they are asked to do is very monotonous, very boring. It's very difficult to then keep those people, because they would figure out a way to share and create their passion outside, right? And once they know how to do that, then potentially you may lose those employees. So that's a very powerful thing companies can do, is to create a culture of entrepreneurship. And there are many examples. I mean, why do you think Google or Amazon or Spotify receive thousands of resumes every single day? Why? Because people know that if they go and work for these companies, their voice would be heard, their ideas would be listened to, and potentially put to work. So that's something that companies can really do well.
Definitely, definitely. And so take me back to when you were, before you were the CEO of this company. So tell me about your education background and what it was like to grow in a company all the way to CEO.
Well, I have a very unique background, and just like you, I'm sure my parents also at one point disowned me, where they thought this guy is never going to get a real job and make something out of him. But I grew up in India, and then I went to the U.S. To continue my education in computer science, to pursue my master's actually in the U.S. And I realized during that time that I was not meant to be an engineer. I have zero technical skills, so I have zero technical aptitude actually. I was really good at memorizing everything, and I was doing really well in the classes and in the exams. But if somebody were to give me a real life question or real life situation to solve technically, I would not be able to do it. I don't even know how to change a light bulb in my house right now. That's how bad I am when it comes to fixing things. So the first opportunity I got to get out of that was when I came across an organization called Up With People, which was a group based out of Denver, Colorado, and they would bring in young people from all over the world. And these young people, in a group of 150, will travel to like 100 different communities in a year, put on a 2-hour musical performance, and they would do community service, and they would stay with host families. And it was kind of a combination of intercultural program that was promoting peace and harmony among people. And I was 24 years old at that time, and I'm like, my God, this is the best way I can get out of this nightmare that I'm living of becoming a computer scientist. So without telling my parents, I said, I'm not finishing my degree. I'm joining this group. And I stayed with that group for 5 years. And when my parents found out, and they had taken a loan to send me to the US, they said, Maulik, I mean, how are you going to ever make money out of it? Because it's a non-profit organization. You would never be able to do anything out of it. But it gave me a foundation that if you take a chance and if you listen to your heart and that very faint voice that actually tells you what is the right path for you, and if you follow through on that, yes, it will take years for you to make something out of it, but it will at least put you on a trajectory where you want to be. So after that, I finally decided that, okay, what I'm really meant to do is to work with people. And the best way to get out of that whole nonprofit world and really get a real job was to go back to school and become and get my MBA. So I did that out of Thunderbird, a school out of Phoenix, Arizona. And that brought me to my career in setting up business process outsourcing centers around the world, starting with companies like Dish Network and Teletech. And I was sent to the Philippines to set up their first operations. And I've never been to the Philippines in my life. And I was asked to go and meet with the government officials and find business partners And I did that, and I set up an operation that ended up becoming 2,000 people here in the Philippines. And then they asked me to move to the Philippines to run it, eventually leading me to my last employment opportunity with Inspiro, where I started as the CEO. I was hired to become the CEO, and I stayed there for 10 years, leading that organization, taking them from some 12,000 employees when I started to around 22,000 employees when I left.
Wow. That's such a feat, and that's absolutely incredible to hear that you were a part of building something out so big. Like that's no small company, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a people-centric company, so by no means, we compare with the 10,000 people working at Amazon. I mean, obviously,
Sure.
what we do was to take care of customer service queries on behalf of American clients or the Australian clients or the clients from Europe. And that required hiring a large number of people here in the Philippines. But the important thing was to create a culture where these employees stay with us, because there are 800 other companies doing the same thing out of the Philippines, right? So the first thing you have to do is create that culture where employees feel that they are part of the family, that they belong, and then you allow them to manifest their own ideas and strategies.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's so true, And so for companies that are trying to outsource their work, how can they bring those outside people into that family feeling, like especially these digital creatives, these digital natives as you call them, how can they kind of bring them into that family when they're working across the world from each other, or at working from home, things like that? Like, what are some ways companies can bring them into their culture more so when there's not like an office setting, especially during things like this past year and a half during the pandemic? Everybody worked from home.
Yeah, no, and I write about that in the book, that there are three things that the digital natives look for in an employer. Number one, they want to work with companies that provide the latest technology, because they are the products of latest technology. They
Right.
were born with a smartphone in their hand, so you want to make sure that they have that. Second thing that they differentiate themselves from other generations is that they are very entrepreneurial, and we talked about that. But the third and most important thing that relates to your question is that they are very purpose driven. um, Gen Zers and millennials deeply care about social and environmental issues facing their generations, right? And when they're looking for employers, they're looking for employers who are not just focused on generating the biggest profit or the biggest revenue, but they are looking for employers who are going to give back to the community, who are involved in making a difference in the world around them. And if employers are genuinely doing that, then they would automatically attract these digital natives into their fold. Um, Gone are the days where the only time you talk about your corporate social responsibility is when you write your annual report and you have one paragraph assigned to it, and you put a one big picture of your CEO giving this large check to the selected charity. That doesn't work anymore. Now we are attracted to companies like Patagonia that live and breathe their mission. It's very easy to know exactly what the companies like Patagonia stand for. And there are so many other examples. JetBlue, for example, why did it become such a successful airline in a very competitive world? Because they created a culture where they were trying to make the experience friendlier, both in the ground but also in the air for their passengers. And passengers can feel that there is a larger purpose for this company than just making money out of them.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And, as somebody that travels a lot, I know exactly what you're talking about as far as that goes. And so for you, where do you see yourself going from here? Like you just wrote this book just came out. Like what is your next mission?
Well, I'm doing a series of keynote addresses to companies here in the Philippines as well as in Asia. I have taken a couple of consulting gigs for companies who are looking at future-proofing themselves, giving them some advice on their strategy as to how they should plan out their next 10 years. And then I'm at a point where I am deeply passionate about doing things that keeps me in my zone. And one of the things, and we discussed that before we hit the record button, is photography and videography. So I have been a wildlife photographer for a long time as a hobbyist, but I have been really taken by creating wildlife videos and sharing them on YouTube. I haven't started doing that yet, but I have a few safari trips planned out over the next 12 to 24 months, and I would like to share that world with those who cannot or do not have the time or the resources to go to these far-flung places like Africa or India and share those experiences with them.
I love that. I love that you have this hobby that you want to like pursue more now. I think that's absolutely inspirational, and I can't wait to see what you create with that kind of stuff. So my final question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started your career?
I wish I knew that it's not going to be so easy when you are following your passion. A lot of people give up on following their passion just because it gets really hard. There were days and nights when I was with that nonprofit organization where I wondered whether there would be ever a light at the end of the tunnel. And I didn't have a very large support system. My family was not very excited about me doing that, so I couldn't go and talk to them. None of my other friends would understand what I was going through. But I wish somebody would have told me that don't waste your energy being anxious. Just continue on your path. Learn all the skills you need. Become a better person and a professional. Invest in yourself, and eventually, the way the universe works is that if you're putting in your effort and time and resources into something, it will pay off. And so I really, when I look back, I wish I didn't spend so much of my time being anxious about whether anything will happen in my life. There were a few years that I had to go through that experience.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I'm in my, I'm 28 now, and I feel that anxiety frequently. So thank you for sharing that advice. And what would you say to somebody that is dealing with those anxieties? Like, you can tell them, like, don't put your energy into that, but like what are some things you can really do to, like, not be so anxious about the future?
What I did when I went through that experience was to read about people who had taken that untraveled path, the road less traveled. And I would always remind myself that none of these people achieved something overnight when they took that path. It took them years. Because as Steve Jobs once said during his Stanford University graduation address, is that life only makes sense when you look back. The dots only connect when you look back. So when I look at my own life, I realize that everything that I did prepared me for my CEO stint, and now it's preparing me as an author, as a keynote speaker, and as a wildlife photographer, as a hobbyist. So the important thing to remind yourself is when you feel anxious about whether something will come out of it, is not look out for the people who have successfully taken that path and see how long it took for them, and in most cases, it was not overnight. It took them 10, 20 years before something really major happened in their life. A big break came in their life.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to reach out to you, if they have questions, if they want to bring you on as a keynote speaker, or if they want to just follow your journey as a wildlife photographer and all the new things that you're doing, where can they go to find more information about you and connect with you?
Yeah, they can definitely go to my website, maulikparekh.com, and all my social media handles are there. If they are specifically interested in my wildlife photography, my Instagram handle is Maulik_IEYE.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciated that. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, my Project Freelance audience, that was Maulik Parekh. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with everybody, sharing your insights with everybody. I think that there's a lot of valuable information in this episode. So if you enjoyed it, if you got something out of it, please do me a favor and leave a rating and feedback on the show. It helps it grow on the iTunes charts. And it's specific to Apple Podcasts, so I don't think Spotify has like a rating system. I don't think Anchor really has a rating system, or Podbean. Wherever you're listening to this, the main source for that feedback is going to be Apple Podcasts. So if you do have an Apple account, if you have an iPhone, you should have an iCloud account. So if you could leave that rating and feedback, that would mean a lot to me. And if you do that, I'll actually send you a signed photo print of, let's do wildlife for this one. I'll send you a signed photo print of some bears in Alaska that I took photos of as a way of saying thank you for that. So definitely check out Maulik's information, his website. I'll put all of his links down in the description for you guys. And I'll talk to you again next week for another episode of Project Freelance. If you want to come on the show, please DM me at Project Freelance on Instagram, or you can tweet me at Project Freelance and I will get right back to you. If you want to follow everything that I do as far as creative work goes, you can follow me at no.tracers on Instagram, or you can go to justtheletterk.com and you can see all of my information, all my creative work. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, go create something. And thank you for listening to Project Freelance.